Bobby Marks, ESPN, former front office executive with the Nets. We'll look at Game 4, the offseason ahead, and more right now on the Boardwalk on the Hotline with ESPN's Bobby Marks on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Bobby, welcome back, man. We got Game 4 tonight and a very interesting offseason awaiting. What are you more interested in, the offseason ahead or tonight's Game 4 as a front office guy?
Well, I guess you should have shirts that say, basketball secondary?
Right.
So, I think tonight, I think we should all be interested in a Game 4 where Toronto could potentially go back home up 3-1 and close it out on Monday night, something that we probably couldn't have scripted when the season started here. So, it will come in waves. I mean, whenever the series ends, then we go right into the draft, and then 10 days later free agency, which will be it'll be a hectic next 6 to 8 weeks here.
As a guy who has been in front offices that help build rosters, what is it about the makeup of the Raptors roster? Because a lot of people enter the series not all that impressed with them, or I don't know, this team's just not exciting. But what is it about their roster makeup that guys like you like?
Well, I think they're mentally tough. I think that's probably something that we couldn't say about that team and previously. I heard your comment about the Kawhi trade, and I think it's probably a bigger impact than when we traded for Jason Kidd in 2001, where Jason's will really rubbed off on a lot of our younger players here. I think probably the one thing that's probably surprised me a little bit and why I didn't pick Toronto in this in the series and even in the Milwaukee series was how their role players have kind of stepped up here. When you look at Van Fleet and players like Danny Green, Norman Powell. I thought how Game 7 ended against Philadelphia, where they relied so much on Kawhi, maybe they needed to do that just to get out of that game. I thought there may have been a little bit of a carryover effect to the Milwaukee series, and they needed their role players to step up. So, certainly Kyle Lowry has played real well in Game 3 in the last game here. But I just think how Kawhi's mental toughness really just has rubbed off on these guys, and this is not the same team we saw from 2013 to 2018. It isn't. It's just I think the coach is a little bit refreshing there, and I'm a big fan of Dwayne Casey. But I think when you have a young coach who's never really been in this spot before, I think it kind of rubs off on you.
Bobby, you just mentioned Kawhi carrying the Raptors, specifically in the series against the Sixers. I don't feel like he's carried them in this series so far against the Warriors. Numbers are great. We all know he's dealing with some type of injury. But the Raptors, the rest of them, not being Kawhi, have really stepped up this series. What's changed?
Well, I think, you're right. He had a quiet, 38-4?
Right.
But he made big shots when he needed them to. When that week got within, I think he had a 3 and then he had a floater. I think the players have kind of taken it on themselves that to beat Golden State, it's not going to be the Kawhi Leonard one-man show here. I think that was not going to be the DNA of this team here. I think certainly when you run off 4 wins in a row against Milwaukee, I think there's a confidence about that has rubbed off on there. I think Danny Green, who was not good in the Milwaukee series, all of a sudden when you're making shots, the basket does look a little bit bigger. This team is talented, and I know that Golden State has had injuries with Durant and Klay Thompson, but the talent disparity on Game 3, when you lined up Toronto compared to Golden State, wasn't even close. And I know you have Steph Curry and Iguodala and still Draymond Green, but when you look at the bench, the benches here there's a big difference in both teams' benches.
Yeah, we're talking with Bobby Marks, Game 4 tonight. We'll look at the offseason. And another thing, I might be off of my own island here, and a lot of times I typically am, and I'm okay with that. But if you're Golden State, are you disappointed you lost Game 3? Now I don't know where you fall on the Iguodala and Draymond Green as Hall of Famers. But if you think they're Hall of Famers, like many people have discussed this last week, you've got Curry and 2 other Hall of Fame players out in that court. You're at home. Should you be mad that you lost that game?
Well, I think, anytime you lose at home is disappointing. I thought when it was an 8-point game, I think at the half it probably should have been 20. So maybe you're satisfied that you were at least in the game here. I think you were probably looking for more from Cousins in that game compared to how DeMarcus played in Game 2, and when he's going to give you 5 or 6 points here. That's going to be hard. It's just hard when you look at the roster. It's like, I thought Curry would have had to go for 50, and he was close in a Game 3 for them to have a chance, and he scored 47, and they still lost by 14 here. So you don't have prolific scorers on this team when you take Thompson and Durant. I mean, especially how Draymond plays. Draymond is usually your facilitator, a 15, 10, and 10 type guy there. You're not asking Draymond Green to go out and get you 20. And I thought when in the early part of Game 3, when he's sitting on top of the key, jacking 3-pointers, I thought that was a bad sign for Golden State. And I know that they asked a lot from him, but I just have a hard time where you're generating offense from, especially when Clay is not on the course here.
Hey, what do you think this series has done for Durant's offseason? Affected it at all? Did he make a decision, or did he look at this series thinking, you know what, I want to see what this series looks like, and then make my decision?
It's so hard to read with free agency as far as what guys are thinking. I mean, I said it before. I always thought that Kevin was going to return to OKC after they lost to Golden State in 16, and he wound up going to, as we know, went to Golden State here. So, I mean, I think you can look at it a couple ways here. I think you can look at it, if they don't get out of the series and he doesn't play, then maybe there's unfinished business for him to get back to Golden State. But he's already won 2 championships, and he's won multiple MVPs there. And is he looking for another challenge here? Or if they win it, you can also always spin it that, this team can win without me. Maybe there's another challenge, somewhere else. So, I think if it comes down to purely basketball for Kevin Durant, I think, Golden State is the place to return to because of what is, what the roster looks like. If it's not, and it's about taking on a challenge and being the number one guy, then it's probably New York or Brooklyn or the Clippers there. But and I wrote about it, and when it comes out, it's like, he will not have a clear path to getting to a finals. I mean, it's the reality of the situation, like he might have in Golden State right now.
Bobby, I want your thoughts on Demarcus Cousins, because he comes back and he arguably has the game of his life. Not statistics, but just timely plays, being selfless, doing all the little things to really secure that win for the Golden State Warriors. And then you fast forward to Game 3, and I found myself saying out loud on the couch that Demarcus Cousins is a liability on the floor. Maybe that's extreme, but when you look ahead to tonight's Game 4, how important is his impact?
Oh, I think it's huge. I mean, hopefully that you get a couple days rest. You didn't have to travel. I thought there was a stretch in Game 3 where he was unplayable. I mean, the reality, I thought the gas tank was low. I thought he had no lift around the basket. I thought he made some careless passes, and I thought he looked tired out there. And then that could be attributed to him playing 28 minutes in Game 2. You fly across country. I think you could probably look at a lot of different factors here. So I'm expecting a different Demarcus Cousins in a Game 4. They certainly are going to need not Sacramento or New Orleans pre-injury, but a guy that can get 15 points and 10 rebounds here. But there was a point, and I said, putting Andrew Bogut on the court was probably a better fit how that team was playing than having Cousins out there.
Yeah, Bobby, and I don't know. We talked about Durant's offseason. Do you think this series does anything change Clay's mind, or is he definitively going back to Golden State, or is there something about the way this series has gone that maybe opens his eyes?
I don't think so. I think if as long as Golden State offers him 5 years, $190 million, I think that will be a deal that gets done on the first day of free agency. And if they don't, then the team that we saw on Wednesday night is going to be the team we probably see next year, and that includes without Thompson and Durant. And I think that would be that's a wake up call. Because I don't know, they're probably not a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference, even with Curry on that team. So I think if Golden State, draws a line in the sand, then I think maybe Clay could leave somewhere. But from all indications is that there would likely be a 5-year, $190 million max contract, and they will not have to worry about that.
What's at the top of the whiteboard for Steve Kerr tonight in the locker room before the game?
don't fall behind. I mean, it's been a trend. I mean, don't play from behind. It's been a trend in all 3 games. I mean, outside of game
almost all
2,
playoffs, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, outside of game 2, yeah, you're right. In that Portland series and certainly some of that Houston series, outside of game 2 in Toronto, I mean, they played where they had that third quarter. I mean, this team has been playing behind, and I don't care if you're at home. It is not easy playing behind in an NBA Finals against a good team. This is not a 19-63 team, team that has that record here. So I think that's probably the first thing as far as don't play from behind.
I know this is a ridiculous question. Do you have any feel on Kawhi?
I don't. I mean, I think with Kawhi, I think if you are management and ownership here, and when this is over and you have 2 weeks to talk with Kawhi, I think it's all going to come down to how does Masai Ujiri, the president, pitch him on the future. Not about 1920, where basically the whole roster, probably except for Danny Green, returns. But if a player is going to commit 4 or 5 years, like Kawhi likely would in Toronto, what is going to be on this roster once Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka and Marcus Gasol are not here anymore? And what is that going to look like? And I think there's certainly, and I think that's why you get a player like him a year ago, where you can kind of build that trust and let him see what Masai Ujiri was able to do. I mean, he's been able to find Siakam in the late 20s, Van Vliet undrafted, Norman Powell in the second round. Basically, some resources that other teams have. He's able to find these good players here. So I think that's what is going to come down there to. If there's certainly a comfort level as far as if this team can be good, not just in 1920, but for the next 3 or 4 years here.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens tonight. Game 4, we'll have it for you on 97.3 ESPN. It's 2-1 Toronto in the lead. Who thought we would have said Toronto's in the lead, but here they are. By the way, Kyle Lowry played great. Gasol played great. Mm-hmm. They got contributions. Siakam, too, who's been more consistent in this series. Who would have thought you get more consistent in the finals than you do in the higher profile games? But now we look at the offseason, and one of the things that you wrote, Bobby, about was Anthony Davis and the teams that have a legit shot. I want to start with this question first because of the market that we're in. But if you're Elton Brand, number one, do you make a call? And number two, do you have any ammunition?
Well, I think you have to make a call. I mean, anytime a top 5 player is available in a trade, I think you have to get an idea as far as what it's going to take. I think the problem I would have in Philadelphia, if it's guys like Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, or it's going to take just one of those 2 players, is that do you have a comfort level of Anthony Davis returning long term? And it's a little bit different than what Masai Ujiri did in Toronto, because there was already an infrastructure there. Guys were, you had Siakam, you had Lowry, you had Ibaka, you went out and got Gasol, you had some of those role players there, where if Kawhi leaves, there's still going to be a good team here. Where if you basically gut it in Philadelphia, and it's hard to do a deal because you have like 6 guys under contract, 5 or 6 guys, to get the money to work, unless you're letting Butler or Tobias go. I don't know if you have enough to do it, unless it's basically going to be Ben Simmons and multiple, maybe a couple first-round picks here. So I think you make the call. I think it's highly unlikely that they get involved here, but hey, you never know.
From your research in the article that you wrote, which team has the best ammunition, the most realistic package for him?
Well, I think it's Boston, and they have it, but it doesn't mean that they are going to use it. I mean, I think there's 2 different parallels there, and I think I would be hesitant because I don't know what's going to happen with Kyrie Irving. Certainly, we've read about that the last couple weeks here. How much are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up now Jason Tatum, not knowing that Davis could be a rental? Isn't Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown, players like that? So, yeah, I mean, I think Boston has the right package compared to maybe where the Lakers are, or the Knicks, or even the Clippers here. But we've seen them in the past. They've kind of they took a pass on Paul George. They kind of took a pass on Kawhi Leonard. But now are they willing to do that now without Kyrie under contract?
Does the DeMar Kawhi trade open up more of a path or create some type of quote-unquote blueprint for teams to not be as hesitant to maybe make that type of trade, swapping a star for a star? I mean, just to backtrack a little bit, when you bring the Sixers into the conversation, they don't really have much ammunition, like you just said, but they do have Ben Simmons. I mean, maybe does that give Elton Brand a little bit more of a green light to say, you know what, Toronto just did this, look at them now. If I have the chance to bring in a top 5 player, I'm going to do it.
I think it gives you a little more confidence if you have a strong front office that knows that they're going to put a strong team around an Anthony Davis, and that it's not going to be a one-year flyer, that you have a chance to sell him on staying long term here. I think it goes out the window if it's a team that's going to just basically give up a lot just to have him for a year here. I think that kind of goes against the grain here. So if you're Elton Brand and you feel like you're going to move a Ben Simmons for an Anthony Davis and bring back Butler or Tobias Harris and build out this roster, and then that's something you should explore. But I think if you have any hesitancy that Davis, that you can convince Davis, or even that some of these guys are not going to be back, then I think you probably take a pass here.
We're talking with ESPN's Bobby Marks. The off season, as he mentioned, 10 days after the draft. And, we're here talking about a lot of Anthony Davis stuff, but the Sixers have their own. There has been some whispers that people think the Sixers could go 5-1-90 on Jimmy Butler. If you were talking to Elton Brand, Bobby Marks is in the room, and he says, Elton, do it or don't do it?
I like years 1, 2, and 3. I don't know about 4 and 5. I mean, I think Jimmy Butler.
Well, how do you weigh that, though? That's the hardest part. It's like this guy's going to tell you to go pound sand if you don't get it. I mean, if I'm writing checks in Houston, I'm sick if I have to write Chris Paul that check.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, usually we reward players for what the past happened, what happened in the past, not what's going to happen in the future. Maybe for years 1 and 2 that's the case, but yeah, I mean, when you're sitting on $40 to $42 million in years 3 to 5, I don't care where the cap is going, that is a big number here, and especially where the finances were. Ben this summer, who's extension eligible, we don't know about Tobias. Joel's still under contract here, so I think you have to see what the market is for him. I know that there are 10 teams at room, and there are probably 2 or 3 teams that would take on a Jimmy Butler here. I think the Lakers certainly would be one of them. But yeah, I mean it's a big 5 for 190 is a huge number. I mean I know you gave up a bunch to get him, but I would not feel pressed, that you have to do a deal and take back him just based on how big that number is.
Do you have to have the same thought with Tobias Harris? Like it in 1, 2, and 3, or because he's younger, you're okay with him in 4 and 5?
I don't like any of the numbers. But it's funny. It's like, I talked to a team about this about a year ago, and we just like what dictates the salary of a player? And it's, Tobias Harris is your third option probably, right? But at the end of the day, the market dictates it. There'll be a handful. There'll be a bunch of teams waiting to give Tobias Harris probably 4 years, $140 million. You see that there's not many stretch fours out there. He's younger. He fits in need here. So yeah, I mean, I think, but here's the other thing is like, all right, if you draw a line in the sand and both guys walk, like, what's the alternative now, right? Like you went through the exercise last summer with cap space. It did not work out, and now you're back to basically square one with Embiid and Simmons and $60 million in room. So it's like you almost have to go out and overpay now. Hopefully you win a championship in the next 2 to 3 years here, and then you pray that these guys are still playing at a high level when you get to years 4 and 5.
Bobby, you bring up a lot of interesting points, so I want to look back in the past a little bit and just flat out ask you, were those good trades then by Elton Brand to acquire Tobias Harris and to acquire Jimmy Butler? You just said you didn't like the sounds of the contract for either of them that they could potentially get offered, and you throw in the narrative of Simmons isn't ready, Embiid isn't ready. Did the trades make sense?
It made sense because I think free agency of 2018 left a sour taste in these guys' mouths that you get to a second round and you couldn't really attract anybody here. You couldn't attract LeBron James or Paul George or some of these high level players, and they felt that to go free agent shopping, it had to be in the trade market, and to do that, you have to give. That's why free agency is so hard. You know, it's great when you can land the big three in Miami or Durant, and you don't have to give up anything in Golden State. But most of the time, you have to give up something to get something here, and that's what they were able to do. And when they did the deal for Jimmy in November and Tobias in February, you knew, it wasn't like all of a sudden the season ended and like these guys are free agents. You knew you were going to have to pay them one way or another, 4 for 140 or 5 for 190 here. So, yeah, I think it did make sense. Hey, this is a talented roster. It fell one game short of an Eastern Conference final, so. Now we're in a situation as far as if they are comfortable, hey, we're not writing the checks, but if they're comfortable paying these guys this amount of money and then having 4 max guys next year, then it's up to their scouting department to kind of hit those singles in free agency.
Now those deals get made with that notion, right? Like, hey, we're going to make this trade because we are comfortable spending what we have to on them in free agency. Is that a discussion you guys have when you make that deal?
It has to be. I mean, we traded for Gerald Wallace in, 2011. We gave up a first round, a lottery, the top 5 protected pick here. And he was going to be a free agent. And the big thing was to put pieces around Darren Williams, who was going to be a free agent. And you knew that you were basically going to have to overpay Gerald. I mean, and we did. I mean, and that's probably too much, but that's the case here when you take back expiring contracts and you give up draft picks or players like Sarge and Covington who are under controllable contracts.
I got to ask you then about this trade that just happened with the Nets.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they just did another one.
Right? No, the Nets deal they made the other day with Prince, they set themselves up pretty nice, though, and the Hawks have done a nice job just acquiring picks here. So it looked like 2 very perfect partners in that trade yesterday.
I've never seen a team start clearing cap space 3 weeks before free agency like Brooklyn has done. I mean, the trade won't be finalized until July 6th, but I've never seen a team take a proactive approach. And, hey, they already had a max slot, with including D'Angelo Russell's cap hold to go out and get a Kyrie Irving. Now this opens up the door for a second player here. They still have a little bit of work to do if it's possibly Durant. But, yeah, I mean, Brooklyn looked at the market, and I said it when I talked to Ryan Russillo this morning, there's 10 teams with projected cap space, and Atlanta was the only team right now that is willing to take back contracts and basically punt free agency like they've done the last 2 years. And Brooklyn took an aggressive approach and basically got to the front of the line and jumped all over the room that they had here. And, yeah, I mean, it sets them up to have, a lot of flexibility going in the summer. And I like it for Atlanta. I mean, they did Jamal Crawford 2 years ago and Carmelo last year, and they got a first for each guy. You got 2 now. I mean, you got the 17th pick and a future pick here, and now you'll have 8 players on rookie scale, and if you can continue developing those players, then they become a free agent destination maybe a year or 2 from now.
Should be interesting to see tonight, Game 4, free agency, and the draft. Don't forget, there's a draft stuck in the middle there on Thursday the 20th. He's Bobby Marks, ESPN, kind enough to join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline ahead of Game 4 tonight. We appreciate it, Bobby.
Thanks, guys.